Hall meeting for the town of Ossining for September 30th, 2014. Please stand for the pledge. Thank you very much. So tonight we have two items on the agenda, but as you know, the town hall meetings are for you. And this time, since the last time we had a town hall meeting, we had police first and the reassessment or revaluation second. So this time we're going to reverse that role. And what we're going to do is we're going to have an update meeting. If you live in the village of Ossining, you probably have seen one of the Tyler Technology jackets. They came to my house. I think they've come to most houses around. And there's the Tyler Technology jacket. We thought of that just now. If you were not home when they came to your neighborhood, you can make an appointment by calling Tyler Technologies, or this young man, Ian, will gladly schedule one with you tonight. But before we get to all that, I just want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I want to thank the audience that's watching on TV. This is a taped meeting, and we are not live when we're at the library. But we want to thank you for coming out tonight, and we're going to start with a presentation from Tyler and from the Haberman and Associates, which are the monitors, and Fernando Gonzalez, who is our town assessor. Now understand that this reassessment is for the entire town of Ossining. So it's the village of Ossining, the unincorporated area of Ossining, and 91% of the village of Briarcliff. If you live in the town of Ossining in Briarcliff, you will be reassessed. If you live in the Mount Pleasant portion of Briarcliff, you will not be. So I'm going to turn it over to Fernando Gonzalez, and we will have plenty of time for comments, but I think first we'll just see a little presentation, might answer some of your questions. So, Fernando?
Thank you, Sue. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming out. My name is Fernando Gonzalez. I'm your town assessor. First, I'd like to introduce some of the people that have been involved in this project since day one. We have Mr. John Wallen, Director of the Southern Region of the New York State Office of Real Property Tax Services. And of course, we have Melissa Baer from Tyler Technologies. Ian Fuller from Tyler Technologies. He is the supervisor of the crew that is doing the data collection in the town of Ossining at this moment. And then from Haberman and Associates, who is the company that is doing the monitoring of the project, is Mr. Ron Haberman and Mr. Tom Donato. We will do the update both from Tyler Technologies and then Haberman and Associates, and then we will be glad to answer your questions regarding the assessment project. And if you have any other questions related to assessment, I'll be glad to answer them as well. Melissa?
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me back. We were here, I think it was in July, where we gave you an update, and this presentation is similar to that one. We have a few more things to talk about tonight, particularly data mailers. As everyone said, this is Ian Fuller. He's our field supervisor. He's here tonight so he can schedule anybody with an appointment. We offer evening appointments. We offer Saturday appointments. So he's going to go out in the hallway, so we won't disturb anyone. So if you would like to make an appointment, you can go out and see him. He probably won't stay past our presentation, so if you don't mind, if you could do it before, there may be a break in between ours and the police department discussion. But if you want to do that, you can see him outside. So you are released, Ian.
Could you show us the vest again when they go around the houses?
That's the lovely vest that Ian gets to wear every day to work. You can see he hasn't washed it recently. Sorry, Ian. All right. So, public information, very important to us, and we do what we can to try to let everybody know what's going on with the project. Some of the things that we do are we mail out brochures. If you live in the village, you probably received one if you didn't throw it out. It is a tri-fold brochure. It's in color, and it says important reassessment information. There are copies over on that table over there. We mail those approximately 7 to 10 days prior to when we think we'll be in your area. We can't predict rain or things like that, so it is an approximation. So if you get that in the mail, that's what it looks like. That means that there's going to be a data collector in your area pretty soon. So that's the brochure. We also have a website. The address is mmrc.tylertech.com, and there's a wealth of information on that website, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. We've also held several public meetings, although we haven't had one, I think, in about a month. So this is our first one in about a month that we've done. So 3,500 is how many brochures we've mailed out. So that's about how many properties we've visited, just right around 3,000. This is our website, so it has a lot of information. This is the actual Ossining page. There's pages for each member of the consortium. Right now the consortium consists of Greenberg, North Salem, Yonkers, and Ossining. Sorry, itchy on the clicker. So what do we have on this website? We have press releases. We're going to have a brand new one out there probably tomorrow or by the end of the week. We have a calendar of events listing each and every one of our public information meetings in case anybody wants to attend. We have a short video that explains the reassessment process in detail. It's about 10 minutes long, so it doesn't take too long. We also have it in Spanish. We have copies of all the presentations that we've given, so tomorrow morning we will post a copy of this presentation up there. We also have street listings, so if you want to know if a data collector is in your area, you can check the website and look at the streets. Unfortunately, the list is very, very long, and the reason that it's long is because we do 2 calls to every single property. So if you're not home during the day, we're going to make a second attempt after 5 p.m. or on a Saturday. So what that means is that we're either doing those first calls on one of these streets, and we may be doing the second calls. And because we can only do them 1 day a week or in the evenings, those tend to back up a little bit. So that's why we have so many streets listed. So, but you can take a look, see if your street's on there, and if you see one of those guys in those lovely vests or ladies, then chances are that's one of us. Also on that website, we have pictures of every data collector. We have their car information so that you can verify that this person does in fact work for Tyler Technologies. We do have the town's permission to be doing this work. So we have photographs and car information as well out there. We also register them with the police and with the town. Here are all the public information meetings we've done. We've done a lot of homeowner associations, a lot of condo associations, and we've also done some town hall meetings as well. Here are the hits that we do. We track what of our website, how many people come to visit our website. We've had over 8,400 people visit. Some of those people are returning visitors, but so we do get some good action on our website. So data collection, we're still doing data collection. We'll be data collecting through the winter into springtime. So we're scheduled to finish about March, and this is where we are right now. So because we don't track every single entry rate until it gets entered into our computer system, so I do have the entry rates for all the properties that we physically enter. So although we've gone and seen over 3,000 properties today, we've only entered about 1,000 of them in our system. So what we found is that we only get into about 21% of the properties between the hours of usually 9 and 5 p.m. I assume most of you work, that's why. So on the second call, which is on Saturdays, we're only getting into 13%. I'm not really sure, except maybe you guys are all busy. I know there's like a fair in Ossining almost every Saturday, so we're hoping that now the kids are back in school, that people are going to be around a little bit more. And then we have appointments. So he had an appointment card. Can you hold that up, please? It's bright yellow. We're hoping that you won't miss that one. If we didn't see you at home the first or the second time, you'll get a bright yellow card asking you to make an appointment with us. As I said, we have evening appointments, we have Saturday appointments. We'll do anything we can to set something up that's convenient for you. The appointment takes 10 to 15 minutes max. We've already measured the outside of your property when we were there the first time, so all we're going to do is a very quick tour of the interior. And just to quickly go over what it is we're looking for, if you have a basement, we're going to ask to go look at the basement. The things we're looking for down there is finish, whether it's been finished. We want to look to see if it's a rec room or maybe there's a high quality finish in there. There's bedrooms, bathrooms. We're also looking for what heating system you have. You can point out to us if you have a wet basement, you got a sump pump. That's something you want to point out to us. We'll make a note of it and we'll make a value adjustment if necessary. Once we're in the basement, we do a quick count of the rooms. We want to know how many bedrooms you have, how many bathrooms you have. We're going to look for things like fireplaces, wood stoves, those types of things. We're also going to go to an attic if you have an attic with permanent stairs, and we're going to look for the same type of things. We're going to see if it's finished and judge what kind of attic it is. So it takes about 10 to 15 minutes. So we also do quality control all throughout our process, but particularly during data collection. So what we do is we grade our data collectors. So Ian, who is the supervisor, will go out and relist every property that he chooses. It's a random selection. Per contract, we do 3%. In addition, the monitors are going to do another 5%. So it is possible that you will get another visit on top of one of these data collectors coming. You may see a supervisor as well. And what we're trying to do is maintain that we have good quality results, that the people that we have working for us are doing a good job collecting it correctly. So these are the people that we've had in Ossining. Some of those people, actually a couple of them, were college students and they've gone back to school. However, what we consider, it's basically counting the number of errors. Some errors are worth more than others, and that's because they're more important. So calculating the square foot of living area of a property is really important. It's probably the biggest driver of the value of your property. So that's what we weigh the highest. So if somebody can't measure it right, that's a problem for us. So what we found is that our average score is 4, and a 5 is considered passing. So it's the inverse of what you're used to. So if you think of it as a 95 instead. So all of our data collectors are passing, which is great news for us. And we also work in Greenberg, and they're not as good, so you guys can feel good about that. So the next step, this is where we are right now. We're mailing out data mailers next week in the town of Greenberg. We will be mailing them out in Ossining within 2 weeks. And the way we do this is the first place we data collected is the first place that's going to see their data mailers. We started in Indian Village. That's where you're going to start seeing data mailers. It's kind of a slow process because there's a lot of work that has to be done. Once we collect the information, we go through this whole quality control process, which is very detailed. Then we go through the data entry process. Once it's been through the data entry process, we do another quality, which is more of a systematic quality control, where we run edits. So we're looking for problems in the database that somebody then has to go back, fix, look at the data. So it takes a little while for us to make sure that the data is ready for you guys to see. But we're at that point now where we're going to send you a data mailer. It's a property inventory sheet that has all the information that we've collected for your property. So hopefully you were home and we got it 100% correct. But if not, we need you to carefully look at this form for us. We want you to correct anything that's incorrect and get it back to us. We're actually going to ask you to return it to us no matter what. That way we know for sure that we've collected the information correctly. So whether it's right or it's wrong, we're going to ask you to mail it back to us. So with that mailer, which I have a little screen print over there, it's got some information and talks about number of living units, style, year build, story height. You've got the sketch down at the bottom that tells you where your deck is, the garage, that type of stuff, and a photograph. So even if that photograph isn't right or it's out of date, let us know that too, because we can go ahead and take an updated photo. We're going to include a glossary, because some of these terms may be unfamiliar. We also want you to know what the available options are. So we're going to give you that as well as a cover letter. So there's a checkbox at the top that says the data is correct or incorrect. So we're going to ask you to check that off. If it's not correct, please give us your phone number. We do have to verify some of this information. We're going to try to do that if we've already been to your property and you're telling us my shed fell down, we'll just go ahead and verify that out in the field. If you haven't allowed us to get in, and we do have information on whether or not we did an inspection or not on this data mailer, we're going to ask that you make that inspection. So if you haven't already, it says that you weren't home, call us up, make an appointment. We'll do everything we can to accommodate you, come up with something convenient. So if you have a change, like you have a finished basement and you don't, you're going to have to let us in to verify that. So sorry about that, but that's our process, that's our procedure. And we really want to try to get accurate data for everybody. We want this to be fair and equitable. And one of the questions I get all the time is, what about the person that didn't let me in? So we do everything we can to make sure that we're getting into every property, and this is one of our ways. So if your property information isn't correct, allow us to do that inspection and we'll correct it for you. So once the data mailers have been released in an area, you will now be able to go to that mmrc.tylertech.com web address, and you'll be able to look up property data. We will not have property data for the entire town. We will only have it for the properties that have data mailers, and that's because a lot of them either haven't been collected yet, are in the process, maybe they're in the quality control process. So as the data mailers are released, you can go out, look probably at your neighbor's properties anyway. There are no values. We are not in the valuation phase. This is just data. So take a look at the website, especially if you've submitted a corrected data mailer. Give us 6 to 8 weeks. It'll take us a little while to process them. Keep checking back and you'll see if we update your property or not. We update the website weekly. So that data will be out there now. Once you get your data mailer all the way to the end of the project, you'll be able to check on that data. This is what the website will look like as far as what data is available. So it's got all the same information that's on your data mailer. It's got that sketch again, and it's got the picture. So if you say, hey, I don't have a full basement, I only have a half a basement, you submit your data mailer back to us, we do our inspection. 6 to 8 weeks later, you'll be able to go back on there and see the changes that we've made. So this is the end of my presentation, but there is another that follows, and I believe it's Ron Haberman that's coming on next, yes. And then we'll have questions once this is complete.
Plenty of seats in here, so if everybody wants to come in, there's seats over here, there's seats up in the audience, so please, come in and sit down.
Thanks for coming. We are the monitors. We've been working with Tyler from the beginning. We're here basically to find out, basically to make sure everything runs well. Everything's done following the guidelines and is done on time. That's the main purpose that we are working on this project. Just a quick thing about us. We're a real estate appraisal company. We've been doing reassessments for many years, and we've been actually an appraisal company for 45 years. So we have a lot of experience appraising residential and commercial properties. Just a quick rundown of what we're doing, what we have done and continue to do. We've been going to ongoing public relations meetings, and these are meetings like this one, in front of the public, in front of the board at times. And we're available to answer questions as far as the monitor is concerned. Every month there's a monthly status meeting. We just had one on September 9th, and that's when the assessors, in this case Fernando and Tyler, and us get together and brainstorm, ask questions, and make sure everything's going well. There's a lot of information that Tyler brings that day, and we're there to, to make sure everything's going okay. We have we update everybody there in terms of what we've been doing in the monitoring process. Assist in review and editing of correspondence. One example would be the data mailers, which Melissa was just talking about. We've been involved with the production of that. Systematic edit reports is something that we do, which is very important. And we're basically, now that the data collecting is going on, we're comparing what the data collectors are saying is at your property. In other words, if you have a 2-story house, if it's a colonial, if it's a cape, if it has one kitchen, compared to what the assessment records say. So it's important we have computer edits and manual edits, and we're looking to see where the inconsistencies are. We'll talk about that in a moment, in another couple of slides. Statistical analysis of data collection. Basically, we want to see what's happening with the data collection. What are the problems? Are they systemic? Are they? Is one particular collector having a problem? And because the town wants to know how successful the Tyler is doing in this process of collecting information. So we're working on that and keeping tabs on that. Field re-verification of data collection. What we're doing now, and we've been doing for quite some time, is we've been ourselves, as monitors, recollecting data in the field. And we're comparing that data to the data that Tyler has collected to see if there are issues going on. Preliminary neighborhood delineation, we will be working on with Tyler hand in hand and aiding when we can. We're looking at the neighborhoods right now. Preliminary sales verification, we're doing that. We're going to be looking at the actual sales that are going to be used to do the valuations. And as I said before, one of the most important things we do is monitor the timeline integrity. Most important thing is that the project finish on time for the 2016 roll, and we're making sure that that's going to happen. I mentioned systematic edit reports. These are just a few examples of what the type of things that we've been doing. The first one, entry codes. There is, and Melissa mentioned it before a little bit. There are these entry codes, whether or not we were successful or Tyler was successful at the first time they went, if they were successful the second time they went, if they weren't allowed to get into the interior, but they measured the outside of the building. So we're looking at that, and we found in the very beginning that with some inconsistencies, so we helped get those codes activated. The second one, the square foot living area against the old square foot living area. What we're looking at here is the collectors, how are they doing it compared to what the assessment records show? So we have these computer edits that kick out inconsistencies. The most important thing is the most accurate data that we can have will make for the bestest reassessment. And the LUC, the land use code, these are codes like a single family home is a 210, a two-family home is a 220. A property with multiple residential properties, individual properties is a 280. So we want to make sure when we look at the LUCs, the land use codes, there's no inconsistencies between what is a 210 and what is a 220. In other words, we don't want to see a 210 collected with two kitchens, which would be a 220 or something else. Okay, so we want to make sure that it's very consistent. And very important is the style versus the stories. We want to make sure that if it's colonial, it's not registered, it's not collected as a one-story house. It's important that colonials are generally 2 stories. So if these things don't happen well, the square footage could not be correct. When they go back to the offices and they put into their system, the GLA, the gross living area, may be way off. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And these kind of edits allows us to look at that closely. This is just an example of what I'm talking about. The first 3 pictures there is a single-family home, and it was registered. It was collected as a 210. The land use code is a 210, which remember I said it was a single family, and with a rear detached garage. But it turned out that rear detached garage is a second apartment. So this is really classified as a 280, multiple dwellings on the same lot. So this is the type of things that these field review and these edits catch. And the bottom one, like I said also, obviously it's a colonial, and we want to make sure that's not listed as a 1-story building. Because if it's a 1-story building, instead of being 2,500 square feet, it could be counted as 1,250 square feet if it's only 1 story. So those are the kind of things we're looking for. This is an example of what the data entry statistics are. And on the left there, all that is really is each collector has his initials, and it shows you how many actual, in other words, AM is a person, Adam, let's say, and he has collected 758 parcels, or he's attempted to collect 758 parcels. And the center one is the entry code, what I was talking about before. NOHA is no one at home, first call. And NOHA is second call, like that. So you can see that even though 3,500 or so properties have been looked at, there are about, I think, 1,200 or so that have been actually entered at this point. If you add all that stuff up, it adds up to a lot more than 1,200. And that's because you can see that the first, in other words, 743, which is the first call, there's nobody home, so they have to go back again. So you can see that even though that they've looked at 3,500 properties or 1,300 properties, they're going back multiple times sometimes. So it's a very extensive, time-consuming process that they're going through. And on the right, all that's showing is errors. And it's just the way that we're showing that each property has certain errors. Not errors, in other words, you can see that down to the right side, you have 1s and 2s and 3s. I'm not sure if you can see it very well. But this is computer stuff, and it basically is just telling us, telling Tyler and telling the assessor how the collecting system is going. GIS is very important. A picture is worth 1,000 words. What we're doing here is merely showing which properties have been visited at this point. This was only about, I think, 1,200 or so. And it's pictorial. You can see out of the whole area of Ossining what areas have been done. So we keep updating this as time goes on. This is a simple case, another GIS situation where the green may be 210s and the purple may be a 280. And it was collected, it possibly was collected incorrectly. So we'll take a look at that. So these types of things we set up in our computer, we can see pictorially exactly what's going on. Sometimes this is much better than looking at tables.
We added this slide in tonight because I spent all day out in the field with the Tyler commercial data collectors. I'm sure everybody's familiar with this church. I was so impressed with Tyler, how exacting they were to detail. The basement in this church actually follows the grade and goes down 3 levels. The Tyler people, okay, recorded all of that. They came outside the building. See all the jogs where all the ornamental portions of the building stick out? They measured all of that. I was very impressed, again, at the attention to detail that they paid. That's why this had to go in. I'm sorry.
Isn't the church tax exempt to begin with?
Yes, it is, but
So why
under the
would
under the contract, Tyler was still required to collect all the data of all of the buildings.
Let me just clarify that for you. Every single parcel in the town of Ossining, tax exempt, churches, whether they're not-for-profit, whether they're service organizations, whatever they are, is going to be measured and counted. They are not going to become taxable. The churches are not going to become taxable because, every single parcel is measured and looked at so that you have a picture of your entire community. And that's very important what you do. I don't know if a lot of you understand that 33% of the town of Ossining is tax exempt. We understand that. Maryknoll will be checked out. Every single church, synagogue, and everything, all of your not-for-profits, your IFCA buildings, parks will be measured, and your municipal buildings, everything will be looked at and counted. It's nothing. It's just to get a total picture of your community. So I'm not sure, I just want to make sure that I clarified that so that you didn't think that they were looking at that to tax that to church or anything.
No, it's more of a quantification of time. It's wasting time. It's more of a quantification of
Well,
time.
I think that part of the whole process is to find out, in order for us to know that 33% of our entire community is tax exempt, we need to measure and have all that information. This last tax assessment was done in 1972, okay? So it's very important that we understand what's going on with the community. We will get to everyone. We have teams out there. It doesn't increase the price of the project. It doesn't do anything. It's part of what we're doing to get this whole community so that we know where everything is and we have a total understanding of what we have in our communities. As simple as that.
So how does it not have an impact, a financial impact, on the comprehensive view of what we're looking at? In other words, how are you calculating out that 33% or 1/3%?
Yeah, the same way you do now. Now, what I wanted to point out is that although all these exempt organizations are not subject to county, village, and town taxes, they do pay, some of them pay special districts. And some government-owned properties pay school taxes. So it's very important that these properties as well are assessed correctly with the government valuation. So it's also very important that we collect the data so that we can place the appropriate value on this property. And that would also include all the school district properties, all the water company properties, all of the utilities, every property in the town, 10,200 parcels.
Okay, what I said before, one of the most important things that we do as the monitor is we collect data. So we're going into the field and we're selecting homes and we're comparing and we're recollecting the data. We're going in, we're measuring, we're doing everything we can to get a good inventory for that property. And then we're comparing that to what Tyler collected to see how they're doing. So this is just an example. We select by random that center one, and then we call this the node method. We do this most times, and we select the properties around there. And then we collect information on all of these, and for the sole reason to find out where the problems are. Is it a systemic problem? Is it a training problem? Is it an individual situation? Is the data collector not doing the right job? Or a great job, which they normally do. Is it a problem with the size of the property? Is it a problem with the style of the property? So these are the type of examples of what can happen, and this is the method that we use to find it. It's simple, a sample node data sheet. Very simply, this is just this would be on the left side the node, and the other ones are the.
Can you zoom in on that a little bit so we can see it?
Well, I can explain it. I know this is really tough to see.
It's impossible to see.
Well, I'm not addressing the condo. That'll be addressed after I'm done. Okay. So these are preliminary neighborhood delineations. They're done using GIS system also. Each neighborhood is painted as a different color. That's the present Ossining neighborhood delineation, and we'll be working with Tyler on that moving forward to make sure that's going to be the one that's going to be used. This is just a sample project timeline. I know it's very confusing. It's confusing, but essentially all it says is on the very left side, we started on March 3rd of 14, if you can see that, and these are just the basic steps that Tyler is taking in order to get to the finish on September 15th of 2016, everything in between. So, milestones completed as of today. Generally, this is certainly not complete, but Tyler's done. All the public information program like this one is ongoing. They've converted the town data into IAS World, is what the software that they use to track and value properties. And all the pre-inspection mailers were sent out. Okay, not all. Okay. The data collection training started a long time ago, and it still is going on. Local staff has been trained for this phase of the project, and the inventory collection is ongoing, as we've been speaking about. And that's it.
Just to address the condos, we started in the village of Ossining. We're going to go to the town outside next. We're going to Briarcliff last, And then we're going to do the condos kind of in between. We need to look at the offering plans on the condos. We're going to try to get as much of that information ahead of time before we actually visit your property. And we also had planned to visit them in the winter, because winter is not a fun time to be data collecting, and condos are easier for our people to collect because we do the sketches, we do a lot of that work in the office using the offering plans, because so much of how we value the condos are based on your percentage of common ownership and that type of thing. So we have to collect all that information. So that process is ongoing as we speak. I'm not sure exactly when we'll be able to visit the condos, but we're planning it over the winter time. And again, you will get one of those brochures in the mail prior to when we visit you. We're going to do the best we can to try to get a hold of your association if we can. Maybe try to do it on a Saturday, collect as many as we can all in one fell swoop. So we'll do our best to do that, to try to make it convenient. And so we will be happy to answer some questions now if there are any.
First, make one more announcement, that if you want to make an appointment.
Yes, please go see Ian. He's standing in the hallway all by himself, and he's waiting to make your appointment for you. So please do so. We'll be happy to come take care of your inspection for you. Now, questions, you got to come up to the mic, so sorry.
I just have a couple of quick questions. One
You
is,
need to go to the mic, and you need to, unfortunately, hold it quite close to you. And please give your name and address. Thanks.
Lynn Farrell, 226 Horseshoe Circle, Foxville Condominiums. First question I
A
have
little
is,
bit closer.
how can we get a copy?
Hold on.
How can we get a copy of the individual assessment for each of our homes that you had mentioned in the beginning? That's question number one.
Okay.
And question two is, how are you going to go about measuring our property in the condominiums, especially those of us that are townhome-style condominiums, of which we have quite a few people here tonight?
The assessments will be released in March of 2016, so you're not going to get anything about your assessment from me before then. You will be mailed a notice. If you need a copy of that, because you didn't receive it or something, you could let us know. There'll be information on the website. Once we issue those assessment impact notices, all of the website information will be available. We're going to have all the assessments for every property in town, so you can do your own comparisons. So March 1st, around 2016, is the first time you're going to be able to get that assessment information.
I think you misunderstood my
Oh, you mean your
question.
current one?
My current
Okay.
one right now.
You go see Fernando in the assessor's office, and
Okay.
he'll make you, and I think it's online?
Yes.
It's online, so you can go to the town's website
It
and,
has all the details, bedrooms, bathrooms, so you
Correct.
know. Okay.
correct, and you can get to see what kind of document we've been working with, because they're from, I don't know, 1950s.
The town's website, under the assessor's head in GIS, has some data, such as assessment, limited data, number of bedrooms. But if you want the full inventory, you can come to my office, and we'll be glad to give you a copy of the information that we have, the inventory that we currently have. The Town of Ossinin's website, which is the townofossilin.com, and then on the left-hand side is the different departments. You click on the assessor department, and there, that'll take you to the GIS. Gives you the kind of a tax map view and some of the basic information on the parcel.
The second question, we're going to use the offering plans. So you're right, it's very difficult to measure a townhouse type home because we don't know where one unit ends and where the other one begins. And that's why we haven't gone out and started them already, because we have to get that information. An offering plan is something that's submitted when the condo is built. And it gives all kinds of information of the types of units. Usually there are a set number of units, and there are so many identical ones of that. There may be only 5 types of unit in a complex. So we're going to gather that information. So that's the basis. Unless it's a standalone unit, we probably won't be measuring. But we may do some measuring on the inside, finished basements and stuff. I think that what the process is that you kind of come over here and then wait in line rather than asking, waiting for me to call on you. And I think that'll go a little better if you don't mind. Any questions?
The question that I asked you at the last meeting, you keying in on livable area. This is a bit unfair because many people have put in thousands of dollars of improvements. I've been in contact with a broker who handles condos around here, and she never particularly keys in on a living area, but things that have been done, wood floors, etc., etc. And how much weight are you giving to that? Places that have been less improved, they should get a lower rate than if you're going to just do square feet, empty square feet. It's loaded against people like me, for example. I haven't done that much, so. And I have a comment that I have to make. I think this whole business is a scheme to drive the lower middle class out of Ossining. And turn this into some half-assed version of Scarsdale with a prison.
All right, I'm going to answer the question. I don't think I'm going to touch the second part of it. Appraisers generally use the same type of process. Whether you do mass appraisal like my company does, or you do single property appraisal, we're all trying to identify what drives value, what creates value, why would you purchase your unit or your house over another one. So while living area is extremely important, so if you have 4 kids, you're probably not going to buy a 900 square foot ranch. You need more space than that. So it is certainly a driver of value, but it's not the only one. So there's a lot of things that we consider.
It better not be the only one.
Of course not. That's why we have to collect all this information. Because if we didn't, we wouldn't have to knock on your door. We could just measure your house and we'd be done. And then we wouldn't have to worry about why do we have to get inside your house? To find out what the condition is. So important, very important in this market. So if you haven't updated your kitchen and it looks like a 1950s, or you've got that beautiful olive green shag carpet in your living room, those are the kind of things that we want to know. And if we don't get inside your house, we're not going to find that. So we also want to know if you've done a lot of work on the inside of your house. Now, I know everybody takes out a building permit, so we're going to have most of that information available to us.
Not always.
We also have MLS. We have listings all the way back to 1996, so we're looking at every piece of shred of data that we have that we can use to get that information. So for those of you who weren't able to allow us to get in, that we'll still have something to base it on. So just land size is important, the number of bathrooms that you have, square foot of living area, the condition of the property, absolutely, the location. Where are you located? There are some parts of town that are going to be more desirable to a buyer than the other. So there's a lot of things that we consider, but what those things are right now, we collect more data than we're ever going to use in the valuation because we don't know the answer right now. Every market is different. You'd think that, I've been doing this for 20 years, I know it's hard to believe, but what I find amazing is that every time you go into a community, even if you've already done the values there, what that market is the next time around is different. Because condition, back in 2007 and the peak, condition didn't matter that much.
Yes, what happens if this bubble bursts?
Everybody gets treated the same. So if everybody's way up here, we're all way up here together. If we're all down here, we're all down here together. So your rate is going to be reflective of where you're at. So the higher you are up here, the lower the tax rate is. So the amount of money that the town needs to operate is a fixed amount of money. The other two things are variables. So if everybody's assessed way up here, you're just going to have a lower tax rate to get that same amount of money. So that's why equity is so important, that we treat everybody the exact same way, that we're all on the same level playing field. We're all being valued at the same time period, using the current market as our guide.
Everybody can't be treated exactly the same way. People put in oak floors, all sorts of fancy stuff, fancy tiles.
People are taxed on the value of their property. And while, I'm not going to argue whether that's the right or wrong way to tax people, that is what it is. So whether or not you can afford to live in a $2 million house, if you have a $2 million house, you will be taxed for a $2 million house. And if you don't, you will be taxed for a much lower property. So it doesn't matter who lives there, what their income is, it's based on the value of your house. So the more money you put into your house, chances are the more valuable it is.
Well,
Okay?
incidentally, I also find Tyler Technologies to be misleading. Are you an engineering firm? What do you call yourself? Technologies?
We're actually a software company. We used to be Cole, Layer, and Trumbull, which maybe is less or more misleading, I'm not sure. There was three gentlemen named Cole, Layer, and Trumbull. Tyler Technologies purchased us back in 1999, maybe 2000, something like that. So Tyler Technology is only in government solutions. The primary business is software. So we do municipal software, courts and justice software, tylertech.com. Check us out. We're also on the stock market. Our stock does pretty well, so.
Hi, I think this gentleman asked most of the questions that I would have asked, but I was curious to know, after what you've explained, if there's a house A and a house B, and house B has tremendously expensive upgrades, kitchen, bathroom, but the same number of rooms, same square footage as house A, or whichever way I just did it, they could come up with two different assessments based on the fact that nobody let you in. Generally speaking, the way that someone maintains the exterior of their property is indicative of how they maintain the interior of their property. That's pretty inaccurate.
No, actually it is. If people have maintained, even their landscaping, if they have a lot of hardscape, but you can get a lot of that. I mean, we have to do what we can do. I'm not really sure other than breaking people's doors down or, getting maybe one of those spy planes or something. We do the best we can. If everybody let us in, would that make us happy? Absolutely, everybody let us in. But we can't force people to let you have the right to privacy. We get, Fourth Amendment, Second Amendment. We get that mailed to us pretty frequently. So we have to be respectful of people's privacy, of people's desire to not have somebody walking through their property. We have to balance that with what we can. So if you sold your property and you brag to your realtor that you did all this work, we're going to know about it. If you took out a building permit, we're going to know about it.
But you're saying that you only have that information since about 1996.
Correct.
So that really doesn't really level the playing ground.
Well, if you think of, we're probably going to get into between 60 and 70% of the properties in town when we're all done and over with. And then if you balance that with how many we also have information on from building permits, don't forget building permits, because I do think that the majority of people are honest, especially when you're doing a major upgrade. If you've had a mortgage, they're going to require that you're up to code and that you've had the building department sign off on it. Are there people who are not going to let us in and have something we don't know about? Probably. Just there are people that cheat on their income taxes and other types of taxes. There's always going to be those people. We do the best we can.
Talk a little bit about the neighborhoods now.
Yeah,
it's not just what your house looks like.
Right. I mean, we look at a lot of things. So, people who really tend to upkeep their property, they tend to stand out in the neighborhood. So we do a lot, and so we look at a certain neighborhood. If everybody's maintained their houses, then if you've done your roof and your windows and your siding, but so does everyone else, then that's probably standard for your neighborhood. The ones that don't, they stand out, and we're going to take a little closer look at them. So like I said, we do, it's more than just the condition. That is certainly something that we take into consideration. We try to do our best to value what we can see, which is why the square foot of living area is so important, why the location. Those are the two biggest drivers of value right there. So that's what we can do. We can only do the best we can do.
As a condominium owner in Ossining, has the board decided when they will decide on invoking or making the Homestead Act applicable to the condominiums in Ossining? When will we hear that news?
Until they do all of the data collection, and they do all the valuations, that can't even be addressed till then. So we're talking about 2016. You want to take that, John? You know, just a little bit. John's here to talk about how you don't just, it is not assumed that the homestead option will be put in, it's not assumed that it won't be put in. It's really done after you see the entire valuation of your community. You take out your non-profits and your churches and your parks and what have you.
Yeah, there's not a lot that I can add to that because what was said was exactly right. Until preliminary assessments for every property in the town have been developed, which again, that's going to be available probably the early part of 2016. I'm sorry, let me stand up. That'll be available in the early part of 2016. When there are preliminary assessments for every property in the town, that's the point in time when something known as a tax shift analysis can be undertaken. And essentially what's going to happen is existing tax levies will be used to distribute, the new assessments will be used to distribute. This is a scenario, it's not an actual tax extension, but it's saying, look, if we use the most recent tax levies, which were distributed using your existing assessments, here's what they would look like had they been redistributed with your new preliminary assessments. And that's done two different ways. It's done once with homestead in place and once without homestead in place. So essentially the town board will be looking to see how taxes are shifting. And I know condominium owners are very concerned about the prospect of homestead, but I would just offer the thought, I would just offer the thought that a lot of the decision making about homestead is going to be on how much shifting occurs between properties that are classified as homestead and properties that are classified as non-homestead as a result of the project. And I'll just offer as an example, two communities in Westchester, Scarsdale for 2014 and Mamaroneck for 2013, both went through this reassessment process. Both to varying degrees hit condominiums. Scarsdale, not too many. The point is, what really became the big issue in deciding about the use of homestead, or the potential use of homestead, was how much the tax base shifted from the non-residential to the residential. And in both cases, there really, at the end of the day, there wasn't a great deal of change. And that typically is the biggest reason why a municipality will adopt homestead. So again, that I know everyone's concerned about that, but again, point number one, the condominiums are not, by far, they are not the only reason why a municipality would look at homestead. And the other thing here is, again, really and truly, there are no facts by which the board could make a decision about this until probably the end of January, maybe February 2016.
The fact still remains, speaking of Scarsdale, and I welcome everybody in the audience to review this, it's easy to get online, is that after the decision in Scarsdale 7-0 not to have homestead, there was an excellent summary of the Homestead Act and what it means to the condominium owners by the League of Women Voters, and I welcome everyone to read that. In a very simple way, it explains the income valued approach, which we have now, versus the market value approach, which will make condominiums then be based on a single family home. And this conclusion, which I'm sure it will be here if it gets elected, is doubling or tripling our real estate taxes. You can't change that fact. So I understand we have to wait, but that's a real issue for the people that initially went into this game with a condominium, knowing the facts of how we pay taxes there.
My name's Aquilina Viani. I live on Horseshoe Circle in Fox Hill. I'm a single woman. I don't know about finance. You know, I work at a school. I stay away from the whole money thing. And just like this gentleman said, you know, I moved to Ossining because it was affordable for me personally, and shortly after I move in. I'm hearing it's very inflammatory when you hear that your taxes could be raised 30%, which, you know, the other gentleman talked about the comparison between, you know, the middle, getting rid of the middle income. And I think why that's so important for all of us is because the impact of something like that, it could devastate so many of us. I know for me personally, it would change the complexion of Ossining. I mean, the ramifications are so significant. And that's why I know for me, I'm terrified because I don't understand all this. You know, all I understand is that my taxes could be raised 30%. You know, and the other thing
It's not 30, it's much more than 30.
Much more than 30. Triple. Okay. So, okay, I'm worried about 30. Okay. So that's what I know as a typical constituent here in Ossining, right? And the other thing what I know is that it's a board decision, and we have nothing to say about that. That they can choose. That's the other thing I remember from the meeting. And the other thing the tax assessor told us, I believe, as I'm trying to make sense of this, is that the reason why we're having this is because we had so many tertiaries, because the value of the properties went down, right? Is that what it's called? Tertiaries. And so the money went back out, and now how are we going to get the money back in? We're going to reassess, because now the values went back up. That was my understanding, that the money came out, now we have to put the money. So you know, I understand that we're operating, you know, this is a financial thing here at stake. I just am very worried about the ramifications of what will happen to individual people, to Ossining as a whole, what it would look like. I think that gentleman is right. He said lower middle class. I'm going to say middle class. That I think uniformly across the country in a lot of ways is being, you know, diminished. And this is a perfect example of how, you know, the microcosm of the larger nation. So I'm worried about that, you know, because I'm a single woman who's, you know, middle class, lower middle class, I don't know what I want to call myself, but, you know, I'm just making it. And so my life could be drastically changed.
Let me offer just a couple of quick thoughts. Just one point where you were talking about the sanctuaries. Okay, a little better?
Yes.
When you were talking about the sanctuaries, the reassessment is not an effort to replace the money. The difficulty the town has right now, and the town has been having this for an extended period of time, the town's assessments are so old, so outdated, so unrelated to market value that the town has been unable to successfully defend these certiorari's. Consequently, they're losing case after case, and they are having to pay a substantial amount of tax refunds. Much, much more cumulatively than the cost of doing this project. So doing a reassessment will not replace the revenue lost. What it will do is it will stop the flow of tax refunds that the town is having to pay, and I would hasten to add, all of you are having to pay in your taxes, because that money doesn't come out of the blue, it comes from the taxes that you all pay. So it's meant to stop the bleeding. Relative to changes in value, yes, you're right. It does, it's inevitable that there will be changes in value, but I would simply point out to you, and again, I can't offer you any specifics because we're not going to have specifics until the early part of 2016. But it's also invariable that there are a fair number of homes that are undoubtedly paying more in tax right now than they should. Well, I shouldn't even limit it to homes. Let's say properties, because I don't know what the breakdown is from one type of property to another. But when you haven't done a reassessment in over 40 years, again, it's inevitable. You've got a certain number of properties in the town that are being overtaxed, and you also have some properties in town Typically, but not always, they may be higher-end valued properties that are not really paying what they should because their current assessments don't reflect their market value. And what happens is that other property owners, properties typically of more economical value, are subsidizing those properties because they're paying more taxes than they should. And ultimately, that's what reassessment, excuse me, that's what reassessment is meant to correct. And I'll just also, because again, ultimately I can't offer you any specifics till we get to that point, you know, a little over a year and a quarter from now. But the reason why there is so much anxiety over this in this room and elsewhere in the town is simply because it has been so long since this has been done in the town of Ossining. And what you're experiencing is pretty typical when a process like this is undertaken after it not having been done for decades. And one of the things I know the town will be looking at coming out of this is making sure that the process is done more regularly so the town does not end up in a scenario like you have now where people are very, very concerned about what's going to happen to them because they don't know what the tax impact is going to be. That's about all I can offer.
I just wanted to point out that the lady mentioned triple the taxes, but although we don't know exactly what the impact would be, and we wouldn't know what the impact would be, whether the homestead is adopted or not, it certainly will not be triple. That much I can tell you with certainty. The homestead will not, if the homestead is adopted, it cannot be applied to county taxes. The only way the homestead could be adopted and applied to condos, it would be with a county-wide evaluation. That's not happening. This is just a town-wide evaluation. The town would have to adopt it, and then the other taxing jurisdictions will have to adopt it, the village or the school district.
Excuse me, can you repeat that?
The next question.
Can you repeat that? That wasn't clear.
So that the homestead, in order for it to be applied to county taxes, would require a county-wide revaluation, and that's not happening. We are only doing a revaluation of the town of Ossining. So if the homestead is adopted, the first step would be for the town board to adopt it, and then the school district and the village will have the option to look at it and adopt it. An impact study will also be done based on their tax levies and budget. Next question.
Good evening. My name is Myron Ward, and I live in Fox Hills Condominiums, Unit 11-2.
You need to talk a little bit closer to the mic, I apologize, but in order for them to hear you.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
I don't think I
No, as if you're on camera too.
Okay. Can you hear me, sir? I think everyone here can respect what you're doing because everything has to be reassessed at some point in time. Records are wrong. Everyone here who is a condominium owner has a fear, and I'm thinking to myself, is there right now a legal, physical description of what a home is? And is that going to be legally changed? Because when I purchased my condominium, it was based on an architectural description and a tax base for what a condominium is versus a home. Okay, that's my question. Statement. The young lady here pointed out you can look at the outside and that may be an indicator of what's on the inside. Well, I think everyone here who's a condominium owner can respect the fact that if you're doing that on individual property, a house, that's going to hold true. But as far as a condominium goes, that cannot be held true. We are not responsible for the outside looks. We cannot modify, change, update anything without the board's approval. And it has to be within the guidelines of what the whole condominium complex looks like. Okay, that's number one. Number two, we are required to keep a level of living standard inside the unit because we get reviewed every once in a while by the people from the board to make sure that the inside is livable. So for us not to update appliances, carpeting, floors, is going to diminish the value of the whole complex as a whole, number one. It's going to devalue our unit, number two. And the whole condominium complex, the whole process is for you to have a livable, viable community of people who can afford to live there and keep the property at a certain level of that standard of that people's income. So we cannot let the area depreciate, interior or exterior. And that brings up another point. If we don't upgrade things, how does depreciation costs come into play, if it comes into play at all? We get certain tax incentives, I think it was in 2010 or 2011, when you do an actual upgrade. So if we don't upgrade our property to the standards of the condominium board, they're probably going to throw us out. Nobody wants to come to a unit that hasn't been updated. So it almost sounds like we're being penalized for maintaining a standard in our livable, habitable area that most people were going to come in and say, yes, I'd like to live here. So as one of the ladies pointed out, you got unit A, you got unit B. This person updated, this person hasn't done anything in 20 years. So how does the person who kept things up to the standard of 21st century technology get penalized when this person hasn't done a thing?
Well, first of all, thanks for calling me young lady. I'm going to try to remember all the stuff said. I'm not going to touch the home thing, because I'm sure John has a good answer for that, so in regards to the homestead. For condominiums, we have two methodologies that we have to use. We do both because we don't know what the decision is going to be made at the end. The first one is the income approach, in which we consider it as an apartment, not just an individual apartment, but as if your complex were an apartment building. I live in Avalon, just like that. You know, they kind of look like condos, but they're not. They're apartments.
Right.
So your individual share of the value of that theoretical apartment is based on your common share. So whether you upgraded yours, finished your basement, doesn't matter, because that doesn't change the percentage of your common element. So that's on the income side. That's if homestead is not adopted. If homestead is adopted, then we have to treat it as we have to value it like we do the other types of property. That doesn't mean we necessarily, I'm not going to use a ranch as a comparable for your condo. That's not what I mean. It means that we're going to use a market approach. So we're going to look at what units sold for in your complex. So what complex are you in?
Fox Hills.
Fox Hill. So you probably know what units sell for in Fox Hill, right? Do they vary a great deal? Do you see wide swings in what they sell for?
It depends on the market, like anything else.
No, all right, so you got 4 units, they all sold within a month of each other. Did they sell for very, I mean, we're not talking about this one sold 10 years ago, this one, but typically with condos, they're very, because when somebody's going to buy a condo, what are they looking at? They're going to say, well, this unit just sold for $400,000, this one just sold for $405,000, this one sold for $420,000. They're usually a very tight range. And when they're not a tight range, it's because this guy over here finished the basement. Right? So we look at all those same things. So we try to look at what a type unit sells for. Condos are actually much easier than single-family dwellings to value because they're usually identical. They're identical to each other except for some of those upgrades. And sometimes those upgrades make a difference in the market and sometimes they don't, because it's not like half of your units are available. There may only be 1 or 2 available. It's not like someone can say, well, I want this one because the kitchen is updated. They might not have that choice. They're only going to have the units that are available. So we often don't find a lot of market evidence between some of these upgrades. It's particularly things like flooring, hardwood flooring versus, that's pretty easy to update. Kitchens, finished basements, those can certainly tilt it one way or the other. So as far as the market approach, we do it the same way a buyer does. We look at what is important to a condo unit owner, and we only look at your complex. We're not going to, unless there's absolutely no sales in your entire complex, we're only going to use sales of units that are like yours in your complex to value your particular unit. And that's basically our approach. Did I answer everything? Because I know there's already stuff in there.
So,
Okay.
do you have a measurement that a novice person here can look at and say, all right, this unit sold for this unit sold for that, and this is the reason why? Something that we can look at as novices and measure intelligently and say, all right, now I know why this sold for $20,000 more, because this person did this and this person didn't.
Maybe. Except that some people, you know, the reason why people buy properties is because, oh my God, school's starting next week, I gotta get my kid in, I gotta get in really fast. People make decisions to buy property based purely on emotion and not necessarily on logic. Someone might really like the color schemes that are in a particular unit and pay $10,000 extra for it, I don't know.
How many people here, by a raise of hands, would like to have a measurable instrument where you can judge that my property sold for X and this property sold for Y, and here are at least 5 reasons why?
I want a book that I can open up and say, this is how much a new kitchen is worth. I really do. If it was that easy,
Yeah, but we have to have,
it isn't.
We have to have a measurable standard.
We'll give you, what we're going to be able to produce at the end of this project is basically our methodology. We're going to have documentation that says square foot of living area is X dollars a square foot. We're going to have central air conditioning is worth X dollars that we extract out of the market. That, if that's what you're looking for, we'll be able to give that to you.
Well, my question is, and I'll leave it at that, why do all of these criteria have to be done at the end? If you have measurable criteria, why can't the criteria be put forth in the beginning, and then the statistics based on these items be something that we can look at?
We can't analyze the data until we have collected the data. So, and I work in Connecticut a lot, where we've been doing reassessments every 5 years for a really, really long time, and you actually could do something like that because you already have a database to work with. I have hard copy records from the 1950s. I can't analyze that. So I need property data. I need to know which units have what square footage, what do they have air conditioning, and then I can look at the sales information, and then I can start determining what those things are driving value.
What you just said, I understand completely.
Okay.
I have to find out what this has. But central air is worth this. Window air conditioning is worth this. Carpeting is worth this. Flooring is worth this. And then see which units have that. And based on those statistics, then you're giving us figures.
But I don't know what an air conditioner is worth. I don't know what a carpet is worth until I get the sales of those units. Because, so for instance, what a central air unit in Fox Hill may not be worth what it is in a different type of condo unit. Or even in a single family dwelling. What it's worth is what it's worth in the market. What is someone willing to pay extra for that? Now we use a cost approach where we're actually just estimating what's the cost of central air conditioning. That is really easy to do. We can use Marshall and Swift. We can look at some other things that say it costs $2 a square foot to install central air conditioning in a house. That's easy. But when we're talking about how much something adds in the market, this living, breathing market that changes from day to day, that is so different, you know, from 1950s to 2007 to now, we have to actually take that information and we look at all the sales, and then we start looking at what things are worth, what is each of these things contributing to that ultimate sale price. So we need the data, we need to look at all the sales, make sure that information is correct, and then we can start analyzing it. So, you know, this is something we're going to start doing in the next probably 6 months. That's just part of the process, that's the way it has to go. Not to mention the fact that we have to wait for the sales to occur. So our data value is July 1st, 2015, and we're going to look at sales from July 2013 to July 2015. So a good section of the data that we're looking at hasn't even occurred yet, and I know Karen is in a second.
All right, in finality, I think most of our concerns are centered around the definition of what is home and what is a condo. And for the most part, I, like a lot of these people who came and moved into a condo, because I had a physical, legal description of what a home was versus a condo and the advantages and disadvantages of each. So my remaining question is that legal, architectural, physical description going to change, which is going to affect our taxes?
No, the answer to that is no. The ownership information,
does not change. Your type of ownership, condo versus a single family home, does not change. The only thing that we are looking at, the method by which we value the unit, whether we value it based on the income approach, as you mentioned, or based on the market sales comparison approach. And what I wanted to point out that on the town's website, under the assessor's page, we have a list of sales throughout the town, and that list of sales includes condos, and you could see what units in your particular development are selling for. Also here in the audience, we have quite a few very competent realtors, and some of them issue updates on a weekly basis, which I get, some of them, that gives me specific details of what units came on the market, what units sold, what units are available. So all that information as well is available in sites such as realtor.com, as well as on the town's website. Our sales, of course, we get and analyze as soon as we get them from the county, and we do, on a regular basis, update the listings that we have on the website. And if you have any questions on any specific sales, you can call my office.
All right, in closing, I'm leaving.
Sorry, we have to-
In closing, if that physical description doesn't change, I think that's what we have our concerns about, because we don't own property, and that's common property.
Okay, that will not change.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Lillian Nahas. I live at 52 Deerfield Lane in the Deerfield Townhouses.
Please get closer.
I'm not that tall, so. Is that better?
Yes.
If the town has not been revalued in 30 plus years, I think it's fair. I don't have a problem with revaluation, and I would hope that most people would not have a problem with that. However, I do not believe that homesteading the condominiums, it's obviously not good for the condominium owners, but I don't believe it's good for the town of Boston either, for a number of reasons. This gentleman stated that the board does not have the facts on which to base their decision with respect to homesteading. So I'd like to give you some information based on a demographic study I did of our development, which is fairly representative of the other condominium developments. At this point, 45% of the people that live in Deerfield are 60 years and older, which means that 2 years from now, they'll be of Social Security age. So you're looking at 45% of the people, of condominium owners potentially are seniors. Another 21% are 50 plus at this point in time. So that's almost 2/3 of the people 2 years from now will be considered either seniors or pretty darn close to seniors. In addition, 1/3 of the condominium owners in our development are single, period. Another 10% are single parents with either small children or adult children living with them. It's not good. I mean, there was an article in the current edition of Westchester Magazine about the best places to live in Westchester, and at the very end it spoke of condominiums and co-ops, and it mentioned specifically Ossining and Peekskill as being the two premier places in the northern part of the county where people can have, a plethora of choices with respect to condominiums. What's going to happen to all these condominiums that the town sanctioned? If these people can't afford to live there, these are the people who are contributing to the community. Oh, and by the way, in our development, we have 9 children of school age. None of them are in the public school system. They're all in parochial schools or private schools. We're easy on the school system. We're easy on the parks and the pools and the amenities that the town has to offer, because most of the condominiums have at the very least a pool. Some have tennis courts, some have their own playgrounds. In addition, I have a friend who is a traffic engineer, licensed engineer for the county. And he told me that the county recently conducted a study that shows that condominiums produce 1/3 the amount of traffic on the road as opposed to private homes. So not only would homesteading be bad for condominium owners, it's bad for the town of Boston. It's just a bad idea across the board, and I really hope that this board will take all that into consideration before they even consider making a decision on that subject.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Stephen Zinner, and I live in a condominium, I live in the woods. My question is, this process that we're engaged in, going through for reevaluation in Austin, I'm sure it is the other villages and towns and what have you have gone through it. And my question is, of those that went through the process and finished it, how many of the condominium owners saw increases? In other words, if we have this little town, this group we're evaluating over here, and the net result of the evaluation is condominium owners had to pay more, that's one thing. If they have to pay less, that's obviously this alternative. But the question is, if I have 50 of these programs reevaluated and then redistributed, how many of those ended up with condominium owners paying more money as opposed to those that pay less money? Thank you.
We simply do not have that data. Every community is different. Again, in Austin, we haven't done a reassessment since 1970. In some other communities, they haven't done a reassessment since the 1700s. So, but the few communities that I know of, I do not have the data whether the taxes went up or whether the interest went up. Again, the two most recent communities, Scarsdale did not adopt the homestead, and neither Mamaroneck.
My name's Mike Vaughn. I live in the woods. First of all, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, sir.
Oh, John Wall.
If I remember correctly, at the April meeting, there was a beginning of a discussion about the Homestead Act option. And in that meeting, you said, in your experience from the state, what you have observed is typically when Homestead is invoked, in those places where it has been invoked, condominium owners have experienced an increase of their taxes of something between double and triple. Those were your words, sir.
I disagree with you. I would have said that they would have gone up, but I would have never have said doubled or tripled. I think you misunderstood or misheard.
I may have. But they go up a lot.
They typically, yes, I would agree they do go up.
A lot.
They go up, definitely. The amount, again, depends from place to place.
A lot's a subjective statement. But typically, when Homestead is invoked, condo owners experience a significant increase in their taxes versus if Homestead had not been invoked. Is that not true?
I would tend to agree with that.
Thank you. Then I have a question for the board. You say, and it's your story and you're sticking to it, that you can't consider Homestead, you can't even begin to think about Homestead until you have all the data. Fair enough. But let's think about this for a second. Let's assume for the moment that when all of the data are in, and you conclude that in a balancing of the equities, the significant increases that condo owners will experience and the somewhat less increases or reductions that
single-family homeowners might expect. You balance that all out, and you decide you want to implement homestead. Are you prepared to simultaneously begin to deliver the services to the condo that we currently pay for by ourselves, but which the town provides to single-family homeowners, such as street plowing, street maintenance, sewer maintenance, light, street lights, etc., etc. Are you prepared to pay those, to provide all of those expenses for us, so we no longer have to pay for them ourselves? Yes or no?
Well, it isn't a yes or no answer, but it is. Excuse me. We have respectfully listened to everyone that wanted to get up and talk. We expect that back to us. So, all I want to say to you is that everything, the amount of seniors that live in the condominiums, everything we have been to, I would say we've been to 75% of the condominium developments in the town of Ossining. I would also venture to say that most of you have been at the meeting. And what we told you that we would do is we will take everything into consideration. We will have meetings galore on the whole issue when it becomes the time to do that. So we have done that repeatedly on every single subject, so I would tell you now that we will listen to everything. We have had different people talk to us at different condominium groups. We have listened to everything. We actually know the percentages of how many seniors live in, or people close to being seniors and what have you. So we do understand that. We understand the different things that you pay for now, such as garbage collections, the snow plowing, and the like. So everything will be taken into consideration. This board has not even considered it. We have not considered it either way. We are waiting for the data collection to be done. We will then evaluate everything. We will have town hall meetings. By the way, for all of you that don't know this, we have a town hall meeting every 6 weeks on different topics, and then we open the floor. So we will have plenty of time to discuss this ongoing and see where we go from there. That's the answer. No, you cannot legally, sir. Okay, I want to be able to listen to a couple more people.
May I make
Yes.
just one thank you for your response?
Thank you, sir. Thank you very
You
much.
said that you have a town hall meeting every 6 weeks.
Yes.
I submit that probably you're the only ones who actually know that.
I would beg to differ with you. We've been doing this for 3 years, so.
Maybe, but you know what? All I'm going to suggest
Matter
is
of opinion.
people don't actually pay a lot of attention to that,
Okay.
regretfully.
Okay.
So my suggestion is you have a terrific email program. You send out notices. Send them a little bit further in advance than I think the one for this meeting went out on Friday.
We've been talking about this September 30th meeting since the beginning of August. So, but we will continue to get better at sending out notifications for everything. That I can commit to you. Okay? You're very welcome. We want to hear a few more people.
Many owners here are all in agreement that this homestead option is probably bad for us, and we're opposed to it. Now, when you say the board will vote on this, the board consists of who, you 5 folks?
Yes.
And are you, I'm not really that versed in town politics and such, are you guys elected to these positions?
Yes, we are, sir.
Will there be an election before that decision?
Absolutely.
All the condo owners, please take note.
Hi, I'm Susan Ziola. I've been a realtor for over 16 years. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but this is something very close to my heart. I've sold more than 28 in my own development, and there are many reasons that I personally bought my townhouse. We buy townhomes for many reasons. One of them is the taxes are so low. And the reason that we're doing that, we're also giving something up. So we don't have the freedom to expand. We don't have the freedom to do anything on the outside of our units. It's much different than a single family home where you own the land. We don't own our land. So what's going to happen here, I think, is if it does go through, so let's just say it does go through, I believe that our property values will probably go down, at least in Windcrest where I live, around $100,000, at least. Okay, and so the taxes at that point will go up, and then our market values will go down, and we will fight our taxes. So instead of having one development fight, we'll have 82 people from my development fighting the town to get our taxes lower because our property values went down. At the end of the day, we'll get that, and the only thing you accomplished was making us lose our equity in our homes. So I don't think this is a win-win situation either way.
Thank you for coming. One more on this, because we understand that it is about the homestead. I want everyone to know that there are some on the webpage. There is a brochure that you can print out yourself. It talks all about the homestead. There's tons of information on the townofosting.com webpage. You can go to the assessor column. You can go out to the reassessment page. There's a lot of information. There's some brochures on the desk by the clerk and attorneys and stuff. So if you want any other information, feel free to come up to the 3rd floor of 16 Croton Avenue. I'll let you talk in 1 second, sir. 16 Croton Avenue. We'd love to see you. Please don't come up in mass, you know. But if you'd like to come up, you can talk to Fernando in the assessor's office. I'm in the supervisor's office. Maddie's in the supervisor's office. And so we're available for you. We have a very open office concept. You know, I had someone come in today and I was in the middle of a meeting, of course. You know, if you want to make an appointment, feel free to call us at 762-6001. We are here for the residents of Ossining. We understand what your concerns are. And sir.
Sure. Ron Goldberg, 212 Horseshoe Circle, Fox Hill. This is a quick question. This goes to a little bit of John Wollen's point that normally the homestead option was really kind of put together as an option for when there's like a significant tax burden shift. I guess my question is that if there's not going to be a significant tax burden shift, let's take the town of Mamaroneck. Do you agree with the decision of Mamaroneck, the town, not to adopt the homestead option because of that very reason that there really wasn't?
Absolutely.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
There wasn't enough of a shift to make it worth their while to shift the taxes. It wouldn't have been. That's why it's so important that we assess everything. We take out the not-for-profits, we take out the churches, we take out the safety net organizations, we take all that out, the parks, the municipal buildings. It is amazing when you actually drive around and look at what is not taxed. But absolutely, and that's why it's so important that we wait till 2016 till we have those numbers to even discuss this. It's essential that we do that.
I just wanted to make sure that you agreed in principle that if there's not going to be a significant tax burden shift, then there really isn't a need to adopt the homestead option. You don't have to sort of break glass in an emergency that all of a sudden there's going to be this massive hit on residential homeowners. I guess that...
I get it. I get it. By the way, that was my house up there that they showed today. And I just signed off because my, when they came in and inspected my house was fine.
The only other second question, really quick question, is that based upon the demographics of this town, the type of properties we have here, obviously, I think, John, you also mentioned this in a prior meeting, that if there's not going to be a very large commercial base in the town, it's pretty small, for example, the likelihood that there's going to be a significant tax burden shift is going to be fairly low. And I guess my question is, based upon everything, maybe Fernando Gonzalez, maybe you would have an input on this question as well, and based upon the demographics, the kind of parcels we have, the kind of taxes we paid historically in this town, do you really expect, when you do the reassessment, can you give us any idea, is it really likely that there's going to be a substantial tax burden shift here in the town of Ossining?
I wish I could give you an idea of the trend, but what I can tell you are facts. We have 10,200 parcels in the town of Ossining.
Right.
Of those, 1,850 are condominium, and of the breakdown between commercial and residential on the taxable parcels is about 6,600 residential parcels, which is 1, 2, 3 family and vacant land, and about 900 commercial parcels. So our commercial base is only less than 10% of the total parcels. However, I cannot tell you exactly on the taxable side what is the total, what does it represent when you look at taxable value residential versus taxable value commercial. The important thing, since all of the values, all of the assessed values are going to be changed, and since we haven't done this in over 40 years, usually you pick up a lot of inventory that we have no record of. So we may have increases in physical inventory in the commercial and residential. To what extent, we don't know. So it's
So you
very
really have no
difficult to write.
idea in terms of, you really can't even venture a guess as to whether there's going to be
At this
significant.
time.
At this time?
No.
Okay.
It would be responsible.
Fair enough. Thank you very much.
So I want to thank you if you came for the reassessment portion. You're more than welcome to stay. Especially if you live in the unincorporated area of Ossining, because if you have any comments, as many of you know, the reassessment is only one portion of this, of what we do in the town of Ossining, and we're going to be discussing, if you have any comments on the police services contract, please stay. We're going to wait a couple of minutes so the people that want to leave can leave, and we'll take a 5-minute break. Things as we started saying when we took a little break because we had some people leaving, a couple of people left, not many, is that town of Ossining constantly has between 15 and 25 balls in the air all the time, so this is one of them. We think this is an extremely important topic, the revaluation of the entire town. We're glad we have such a professional company and a professional assessor's office working on this, so we're very happy. One of the other things that we are looking at right now is we are in the process of choosing a police service for the unincorporated area of Ossining, which some people refer to a bow tie around the community, and I refer to it sometimes as a ribbon around the village of Ossining and the village of Briarcliff. It was determined approximately 2 or 3 weeks ago that we would go into negotiations with the village of Ossining as far as their proposal is concerned. And what we want to do tonight is we want to open the floor should anyone have any comments to make as we move forward in those negotiations. If you didn't get the press release, it's on the web page, and it explains that in the last 4 years we have been extremely pleased with the county police, and we thought long and hard about this whole process. We actually took a couple of months, and we worked on it almost daily, and we just wanted to, we saw that it was with the savings, with the dollar savings that the village had to offer, that was one of the main focuses that we were looking at. We do understand that there's a use of overtime. We have gone over that time and time again with them. So as we continue these negotiations with the village of Ossining, which we have given a time date of October 15th, that's not to put pressure on people, but we are both, the village and the town of Ossining are in our budget cycles right now. We need to come up with an answer for that. But we wanted to give the public one more chance in a town hall meeting of making any comments that they would like to make concerning the county police and the village of Ossining police and the policing services. Again, we ask you to be respectful of each other and of the board. We ask you to limit your time that you're at the mic. If you find yourself going over, just to remember there might be other people that are looking to make a statement. So please, if anybody would like to make a comment to the board now concerning the police services of the unincorporated area of the town.
How you doing? My name's Chris Paracone, Westchester County Police Officer. For most of you people know me, formerly the Town of Ossining PBA President. all the formerly town of Boston police officers are sitting on the back wall. One of them's on vacation. I just wanted to touch base with you guys. I know it seems like yesterday, we just did this 4 years ago. So, I thought everything was going smooth, and, we went over this, and I know it's about cost savings, but it doesn't seem that we're comparing apples to apples. There's a lot of hidden costs and a lot of unanswered questions that yourself has asked the village, and we haven't got any real answers about it. And especially after just hearing what we heard about taxes, I have the feeling a lot of the unanswered questions are going to raise your taxes. And just something to touch on, I just printed this out. This was Ms. Jeffrey, who I guess you wrote a letter to the editor in the Journal News yesterday. Just to touch base quick, I'm just going to read a line. You just put out, this was a quote, "I was concerned about the amount of overtime and began asking questions regarding viability of the plan. After several conversations, I am satisfied there are restrictions in place to keep the officers and the residents safe." I think this refers to the overtime. That was your main concern, because the Village of Austin has to hire 5 new cops, and they're going to be on overtime. You said you were satisfied with the response you got. What was the response? I think the public should know what the response was, because nobody really knows what they have in place. You put you're satisfied there are restrictions in place to keep the officers and the residents safe. I just think somebody should let everybody know what the conversations were with the village.
What I did, I live in the unincorporated town, so I personally, okay, is that for me? Personally, also affected. At the point where the proposal came in, it came in at the time stating that there would be overtime, and so I immediately asked questions at that time when that proposal came in. The conversation I had was about the different ways that the village and police officers in general can do overtime. There are double days, there are double shifts, there are different changes in shifts, there are people taking different ways of overtime. My understanding is that police departments in general use overtime. I understand that at this point we have no known other, or I personally don't know of a police department that has probably utilized it in this fashion, but I also reached out to the state to ask a question about that, and there is no, bless you, Amber. There is, basically the statement is that police departments can utilize their staffing as they see fit, and I believe that this police department, with the continuity of borders and community, will be able to do that in a way that is not going to be in any way negatively affecting us. Just so you know, before I did this and before I lived here, I worked for a law firm that dealt with municipalities, and I dealt with big police departments. I know a lot about police departments in that regard, and so I use some of that knowledge. But yes, I think that you guys have done a great job. We've been happy. I think that there's considerations 4 years later that are different. I think it's a different landscape.
Okay. I respect that, but I mean, if you dealt with big police departments, I mean, we're only dealing with 5 cops we're talking about in overtime, you would see this is an actual problem, and it's going to just basically snowball, and the price of everything is going to go to the town. As far as a police car getting wrecked or an officer getting hurt, the liability and all the costs is going to go to the town. When the county, it's one price, and that's what you get.
Okay, I just want to clarify one thing. The proposal from the village is that they are hiring 5 officers that will be trained, and the extensive overtime would be the first 6 to 7 months while those officers are in training. That's okay.
But they're still going to be short, though.
And part of our negotiations is all of those other items that you mentioned.
Okay. Well, if that's still negotiations, I don't think it's time for you guys to make a decision. Maybe there should be an extension, and there should be a study done on it, and everything should be held in the public, and people have the right to hear what's going on instead of these quick little meetings like this. You know, I don't see this you know, happening overnight. There's a lot of unanswered questions. I don't want to, you know, keep going. I know the people.
I want to let the residents speak too, sir. You know, and I understand your concerns, and I thank you for your comments. But this is not an overnight decision by any stretch of the imagination. And as I said, as we said in the press release, what we decided to do was to go into negotiations with the village. Okay. All right.
Good evening, my name is Jerry Hirschner. I'd like to ask the town board members individually, under what conditions would they consider signing a contract with Westchester County and having the town outside residents pay, on average, an extra $700,000 a year that only one of the town board members will be paying? Can we start with someone on the...
No, because we're in negotiations with the village. We're bringing up different subjects when we talk to them. So we don't have the total picture right now.
I asked the question. Mr. Blau, would you like to answer the question?
No.
No? Mr. Wiltshire? Mr. Harder? No, you wouldn't. Ms. Jeffrey?
No, Tim, we don't want, what you're saying, you want us to say, what would it take for us to go to Westchester County?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, given the fact that it
Well,
would
why
cost
would we say
the
that?
town-
Why would we say that while we're in negotiations with the village?
No, what
right now?
conditions of the proposal?
Failure to finish the negotiations, that would be it.
If you're worried about overtime, I don't care about the overtime issue. I care about saving $700,000 a year to the town outside residents.
Thank you, Mr.
It doesn't,
Commissioner.
excuse me, I don't interrupt you. Why are you so rude at interrupting me? I don't cut you off. You have a habit of cutting people off. And I think that's downright rude. Okay? The town outside residents could be in a position of paying an extra $700,000 a year on average. All right? I'm interested in knowing what conditions will you think it would be proper for all the town outside residents to pay that money when 4 of the 5 members of the town board, well, they don't pay that money. Mr. Harder, would you care to answer? Mr. Blau, thank you.
Mr. Gershner, thank you very much for coming forward. We always appreciate the town residents' input because we need to hear from the residents in order to make a full and complete assessment of the information so that we can make the best decision for the benefit of all the community. I don't really understand your question. Are you telling us that you agree that we should continue negotiations with the village?
Absolutely.
Okay, so then we are. So
Well,
I don't understand then what you're asking.
But is there not a possibility that you could say, well, I don't really think that the village can really do this job, and we're going to spend an extra $700,000 and hire Westchester County when 4 of the board members will not be paying that $700,000?
Okay. I think the simplest answer is that there's an awful lot of criteria and information that goes into this decision making. This has been a very, very important item on our agenda in the legislative sessions and in special meetings and in town hall meetings and in work session meetings. There's a great deal of information, a lot of input from the community, and thank you very much for your input. There's no one particular factor. However, the financial aspects are a very significant factor, but by no means the only factor. So when you say what conditions, we don't know what those conditions are. We're in active negotiations with the village, and if those negotiations break down, the financial aspects would be a consideration as to whether or not we would shift our focus towards the county. But at this point, Mr. Gershner, it's clearly speculative, and I won't engage in that.
Well, I'm concerned about my money.
And it's a very genuine concern. I appreciate that. Thank you for your input.
All right. Next question. I have failed to see, maybe I missed it, although I did request it and it has not been provided to me, what are the budget implications and real estate tax implications of the 2 competing proposals versus 2014's expenses. For instance, in 2015, will there be a tax increase or decrease on either one of the proposals?
We have to wait till our whole budget is put together, sir.
Well, excuse me. All right, how much are we spending this year in police services, the Westchester County?
2.4 million.
And the Village of Ossinin's bid for next year is 1.1, so that's $500,000
Well,
less.
it's 2 million.
2 million, so that's $400,000 less. And the County of Westchester's bid for next year is
2.5.
2.5. So there's...
So we know these numbers. You
No,
know
but you
these
haven't told
numbers.
them to the public yet.
Absolutely, we have put them out to the public.
I've asked for those numbers
We
in
have,
writing,
by the way,
and I haven't gotten them.
I'm sorry, every single piece of the proposals are on the webpage. Everything time we've discussed it is on the webpage. Feel free to go and look up that information.
I've looked and I haven't seen the real estate tax implications.
Because we're not at that point yet. Because
Well,
there's
if
so
you-
many other things to the real estate tax
Why don't
when
you-
we do the budget.
Why don't
So-
you just make a hypothetical situation based upon the two
Because
bids
we are in the middle of
2015? Yes. So based upon the two proposals from 2015, right, what would the difference be in real estate taxes if we chose one over the other versus what we're paying now? I don't think that's a hard
Thank you for your
calculation.
comment. Thank you for your comment.
Is there some reason you don't want to provide that information?
No, we will see what we can put together, but we're not going to guarantee it, so.
Is that a difficult number to put together? Or is this something that we don't
When
want
you
to
have to take into consideration your entire budget, it's not just one service, it's not going to change a tax implication, so.
So after 3 months of having these proposals, you haven't at all done the calculation as to what the tax implications would be of these two proposals? I've asked for it in writing, by the way, it has not been provided to me.
Thank you, Mr. Kirshner.
Are you aware that I've asked for it in writing?
I wouldn't know, you don't always put me on your emails.
I didn't, it was sent to the budget director.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could you ask her to provide me with that information?
We will see what we can put together if we can.
Do I have to file a freedom of information?
Go ahead.
request against?
Go ahead, it has to be something that is
Is
available.
there a reason you don't want to provide the public and the press with that number? It's not a hard number.
It is when it is not going to be what your taxes are at the end of the day.
Give me a hypothetical.
No.
If 2014 is X, and 2015 we have two different numbers, just if nothing else changes, what's the
That's
difference?
impossible. That's impossible when you're putting a budget together,
No,
sir.
it's not. If you, I
Oh,
say-
I'm sorry,
make
I'm
an
sorry.
assumption.
You know budgeting for
Yes, I do.
municipality?
Make
Okay.
an assumption. If nothing else changes.
No, I
why
won't make
is-
that assumption.
Because you don't want to provide the number that shows
Okay.
one is much higher than the other.
So if you know budgeting, you put those numbers together for yourself.
That'd be the reason why you don't want to provide that.
Okay, so can we talk to someone else, please? Next.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lawrence Maffey.
You have to talk very close into the mic, and we apologize.
First person who ever said I wasn't loud enough. My name is Lawrence Maffey. I have lived on Waterview Drive for the past 14 years. And as you have said on more than one occasion, this town has been very, very pleased with Westchester County's services to it, as have I. My reason for being here is to have a few outlines concerning your current negotiations with the village. It seems to me that, and I mentioned this in an email that I sent to you back in July, to all of the members of the board. You cannot equate good, solid, experienced police protection for your citizens solely on dollars and cents. The numbers that I've heard here tonight are not significant enough to go into a situation where the village is only they're going to hire 5 new police officers and attempt to fill the rest of the needs of the town with overtime on other police officers. Now, the young lady sitting here said that she had worked for a law firm. Sorry, I can't see that far without my distance glasses.
But I'll take the on, thank you.
You're more than happy to do that. You cannot use overtime on a steady basis. To give you an example, you said that you worked in a law firm. I was the chief of the Indictment Bureau of the Westchester County District Attorney's Office for 14 years under Carl Vigari. I know firsthand, from having tried every type of criminal case from murder down to spitting on the sidewalk, what a good police department is required to have. Rookie cops don't cut it. And it's not going to be 6 months before they're ready. It's going to be closer to a year. By the time they go through the school, in which I was an instructor, by the time they get themselves out on the street, by the time they get themselves acclimated to the area, whether they're assigned to the town or assigned to the village, for 1 year, they are not going to be experienced police officers. That puts every member living in this town at risk. When the county took this over, and all of you know this, they assimilated into their body the existing town police force. That gave them, starting out, an experienced group of police officers to serve the members of the town. To change that, and that fact alone, you do a disservice to the citizens of this town. That's my humble opinion, and I have seen that from first-hand experience. The district attorney that I worked for was a man by the name of Carl Vigari. Some of you may not have been around long enough to know that name, but he was probably the most respected district attorney in the state of New York, with the possible exception of Frank Hogan in Manhattan. You know, the overtime does not work. The chief, one of the department heads in John Jay College, matter of fact, I have her name, but what it was. Maria Habenfeld, who is the chairwoman of the Department of Law and Police Science and Criminal Justice Administration, says overtime was not intended to extend the shift in a permanent way for months and months at a time. I've been in police cars with men who were tired. They don't function the same. It does not work. It cannot work. It cannot work for an extended period of time, and what you are looking to do is do that for at least a period of 1 year. It is not an efficient use of manpower. It is not good for the people of this town. What has to happen here is that you have to be dealing with experience. I believe every public official, whether it be here or any other public official, owes a responsibility to their citizens to provide them with the best possible service, particularly when you're looking at a situation where the difference in cost does not appear to me to be significant, not significant enough to put the citizens of this town at risk. And that is what I feel could possibly happen. Fortunately, you know, we live in a relatively calm area of this county. But being quite honest with you, I have seen more Westchester County police cars in the last 4 years than I have ever seen on 9A, driving through Waterview. Mr. Spector happens to be a neighbor. You know, I mean, it's just plain common sense. And you people have said it over and over again. What I don't understand, how it has gotten to this point. That's my problem. You know, I sit here and, you know, I'm John Q. Citizen for all practical purposes that happens to have a law enforcement background. You know, 47 years of practicing law, I know a little bit about it. You know, I mean, it's, you know, you have independent experts telling you that it can happen. One of the classic examples of overtime not working was in Oakland, California. And they've had real problems out there. This goes back a number of years. It just doesn't work. Now, you know, and separate and apart from the fact, what happens? What happens if one of those 5 rookie police officers flunks out of the school about 4 months down the road? Where are you? You know, and it happens. They flunk out. I taught at that school. I know. There are a number of police officers every year who do not make it. I think you have to consider that. Yeah, I mean, you really have to consider the resources that can be, and the resources, I mean, you can't compare the resources of the village of Ossining with the resources available to the town by the county. Going from dogs to helicopters to bomb squad to forensics. I mean, it's there and it's ours. It's not have I pick up a phone and say, you know, can you come and help us? They're ours. The village cannot provide that to your citizens. All I'm asking, very simply, is that when you go into those negotiations with this town, that you at least think back and say, you know, maybe Matthew made some sense. Maybe I don't. But that's all I'm asking you to do. You can't really equate good police work, which everyone acknowledged we got for the last 4 years, with dollars and cents.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good evening. My name is Sean Armstrong. I'm a Westchester County police officer and also a resident of the town of Ossining and taxpayer. I just have a concern also with the overtime. As you know, if I'm at work and my family's home, who's going to say this guy isn't going to have slower reaction time or you know, have trouble getting to the call due to speed or a car accident? With overtime, it's going to cause fatigue, many other problems, and I don't personally feel it's safe for you know, that to be put on my family. Do you feel that way also as being a town resident?
So I have 2 small children, and safety. I'm sure this whole board cares about safety, yes. But if you're speaking to me personally, clearly, I have 2 small children, and I do think about it. But I honestly would never put myself in a situation as a person who lives in the unincorporated town if I didn't absolutely have utter faith that the Ossining Police Department is a good police department who will be able to provide us with the services and keep us safe. I don't know if anybody in this audience is from the Ossining Police Department. Okay, so due to the fact that there's no one here, I just want to, you know, say that we should recognize that they do service 25,000 residents, that they are accredited and have done. I mean, I feel like the village residents would believe that they have a, you know, I mean, things happen in 25,000 people that don't necessarily always happen in 5,500, however, so there are certain differences.
Well, this is going to be 6 months of overtime, minimum. Double shifts, 16 hours possibly.
And not everybody
right?
is 16 hours, and I think that's part of the conversation that I had before. My understanding when I asked those deep questions was, I mean, we can have this conversation. You have somebody who's doing one shift in one sector, and maybe their overtime is going to a desk, and you have a fresh guy who's out in the unincorporated town. Maybe overtime is somebody who is 4 on, 2 off, but they take an extra day. Maybe it's not overtime, maybe it's double up days. My understanding is that there are various different ways, and those are the questions that I did ask, because I do believe, and I do.
Was there an answer or a system they're going to put in place?
I'm so sorry?
Was there a system that they were going to put in place?
I can't go into all the details of the system, and I think that's part of the contract negotiations. I'm just responding to the question about personally my safety and the safety of my family and the questions that I asked.
Thank you.
It is part of our whole discussions of what would the process be.
Good evening. I'm Sandra Delano. I live on North State Road. My question to you, Ward, is the village proposal totally fixed cost? In other words, they're saying for 4 years it'll cost $7,492,242. Is that a fixed cost?
That's what we're in the middle, that's what we're discussing. We want to make sure that everything that was put in that RFP is what can be put into a work contract. That's what we're in the middle of talking to them about.
So you're saying that there's still variables, and there's variables
Well, it
that
would
are not
always
even out
be,
there.
whether it was the county or the village of Austin, if there was a catastrophic event, there would be variables. But we're trying to make sure that we can, part of what we take everything very seriously. We take the fact that there's overtime being used very seriously. We take the fact that we want to know what the process is. We take that very seriously. We're taking the price of the product, let's call it, very seriously. So this is what we're talking to them about now.
I'd like you all to look up on top there and look at the men and women up there. Those are the men and women that this village, 4 years ago, was ready to knock out of work. They would not accept them. They were all about to lose their jobs. That's something you need to consider, because this village was not friendly then, and I don't think it's friendly now. We're talking about coverage.
I would like just to, because I was actually on the village board at that time, so what it was they weren't going to take all the officers, but they were taking some. But you can't go back. You can't go back 4 years. The decision to go to Westchester County 4 years ago and have the officers, all employed was a good decision. And so we're moving on from that now. And we had to open up and we had to get an RFP. So now we're in negotiations, and we didn't expect, we're just going through everything, that all the pros and cons for both sides still, but we're in negotiations with the village.
That still sticks in my head, though, since I was so active in the town, and I worked with a lot of them when I worked in the hospital. The other thing is the coverage. From what I'm reading with everything that came out, the county has given us on-duty supervisors in the field on all shifts. Am I right or wrong?
You are right.
Okay. The village is not giving us in the field supervisors.
That's not true. But
that's not true, because it doesn't come out that way at all, the way I'm reading it.
Okay.
So safety is an issue for me. The county responds to my call under 2 minutes. They speak of the village able to get to where I live in under 3, a supervisor. That's not good enough for me. That is not good enough. The safety of me and my fellow residents around me, plus I'm on a business street, so we're vulnerable to a lot of different kinds of people. My safety comes first, and so does the street. We've got businesses that we're trying to build up, and if they don't feel safe, we're not going to get businesses to come in. I'm part of that committee, and I'm fighting hard to rebuild North State Road so it's a decent, safe, commercial street. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Clay Tiffany, I've been reporting on, in part, on my Dersh for the Charlatan show since 1994 on law enforcement, and I've read a lot of books. And I've given you 35 pages, and if I have more time by next week, I'll have more names. But I believe that you should stay with the police department you have. In the last 4 years, I have not felt fearful driving through that area of Westchester. I will if the Ossining Police Department is hired. I have witnesses that have told me repeatedly about a word called cooping by the Ossining Village Police Department. I'll say the Ossining Police Department when I'm talking about the Village Police Department. Cooping means sleeping on the job or being elsewhere on the job. I have photographs of an Ossining Village Police Department member who's an administrator now, who was in another community, and he was hiding behind his sister-in-law when I was taking pictures of him. By the way, the Ossining Police Department vehicle was illegally parked. Now, I took pictures, I had evidence, I had audio tapes, and I made the village police department aware of it, and nothing was done by Chief Burton or Lieutenant Sullivan. I live in the village of Ossining. In the section I live, there's a lot of houses near each other. Around July 4th this year, 2014, there was a fire. There were firecrackers, really powerful. I've never had an interest, so there were at least 4 calls. The Ossining Police Department were very dilatory getting there, and then when they got there, they didn't confiscate the powerful firecrackers. The sparks were going out all over the neighborhood. They're lucky that there wasn't a fire. I called in and I said I would like you to get the fire department here, and they did. And there were at least 2 other people that made calls. Hours later, because there were no arrests made, nothing was confiscated. In fact, one of the 2 Ossining Village police officers was on the other property, next door, the adjacent property. I mean, houses could have burned down, including mine. It was unbelievable, all right? I witnessed an Ossining police officer steal from a local business. After he left, he was well aware I was there. He took his time, but he said, I'm going to do it anyway. I asked the gal working there, did you see that? She said, yes, he's done it before. What am I going to do? All right? Recently, I talked to an Ossining business owner, and I was talking to him about something else, and he told me how various Ossining Village Police Department members have asked him for freebies. I haven't even started to go around to a number of businesses. This was just serendipitous, so to speak. Domestic violence. Everybody's acting like they're worried about domestic violence. There's been a number of domestic violence cops in the Ossining Village Police Department that have been protected. And some of my best sources were cops. And of course, I would talk to the wives and or girlfriends. I've given you a tape that was not treated properly. All right? I'm not one of these. And by the way, I've gone after bad cops and I've praised good cops. All right? I've been praised by 2 New York City cops that watch my show up here. All right? In the last couple of years, a young woman, black woman of course, this lady says she feels safe. Well, this lady wasn't safe, and she was beaten repeatedly. According to her words and reports, she was defended by a very reputable woman, attorney versed in the subject. I saw the police reports. I saw the cover-up of the guy said, oh, there's 2 guns here. I don't know whose they are. The report is a disgrace, all right? And this woman was beaten repeatedly. The children were exposed to it. I hope I have a couple more minutes, because I'm all right. And it's outrageous. And I referenced virtually all of the stuff that I'm saying to you, except for the fire. I don't know if I put that in. Village trustee Bob DeRayo told me extensively how he asked various Ossining Police Department members to frequent to enhance the reputation of McSorley's. It took me months and months to get the police reports of McSorley's. Other places, I get it right away. Briarcliff and Ossining, it's different. But I've covered 2 states. In fact, I've gotten stuff from a federal court in Massachusetts. And I think it's outrageous. This is the government you're dealing with that protects these guys. DeRayo told me that he asked various Ossining cops to frequent McSorley's to enhance their reputation. When I finally got the police reports, very belatedly, it's unbelievable what goes on there. And I will say with confidence that in the vicinity, very heavy-duty drugs. and people that are very close to ownership or working there, all right? Protected. Baseball bat, the owner, police report, hits somebody in the head. The Ossining Village cops didn't take the person who got hit in the head with a baseball bat to the hospital. Almost finished, and I appreciate you letting me talk. Immunity for certain favored people regarding illegal drug use. That's outrageous. That's outrageous. Either using or selling drugs within a half mile of the police department or even closer. Top-heavy administrative people, but not really qualified. I mean, when criminals say to me, you can't call no cops, well, they're breaking the law. I have tapes of it, and I will give you those tapes. The cops don't like you, or the police don't like you, meaning the Ossining Police Department. That's pretty serious business, and I will write extensively about why Frank Fiella, of all people, why he writes a letter saying that he endorses the village police department. I'll only say, for possible listeners out there to give me information, but I got more than enough, that he's the commander of the American Legion, which has been allowed to get away with all kinds of stuff under his aegis. And I will finish by saying that my dealings with the town police department, just before they became the county, they had a great cop who I'll never forget. And I had a situation where I had a lot of stuff stolen that's invaluable to me. And you can't, the man that used to work for Carl Vergara, I mean, he was eloquent. I hope you listen to his words, because the quality of the police department is more important, especially when you're talking about peanuts in the scheme of things. The quality of the police that you're going to have covering these people is, the difference is like, it's really an unbelievable difference.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Good evening. Nice to see you all. You don't have I don't envy you your position, believe me. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to everybody. My name is Mark Bush. As most of you know, this is big lettering, so I'm going to go through it quick. I'm the former chief of the town of Ossining Police. Worked here for almost 17 years. A couple of you in the room promoted me from police officer to sergeant, detective sergeant, lieutenant, and chief. I currently serve as captain in Westchester County Police. I've never forgotten that this community has paid my mortgage, paid my bills, and took care of my family for 17 years. And I think that all cops should understand that and be thankful to the taxpayer. Also, I was in favor of police consolidation for many reasons. And I was the architect, along with Catherine Borgia up there, to make some of this happen. So I fully understand the one Ossining and the local police coverage theory. And I understand that some of the good people here support that. As I did 5 years ago when consolidation locally couldn't be negotiated, we looked to the county because we wanted to save the town outside taxpayer money, and we did just that. The county police have done everything right for the last 4 years, as you all have said. I know of no personnel complaints on the officers, no town outside residents uprising during the 4 years to undo the contract. Everything is good. Money saved, people safe. That's a credit to both the town government and the police officers who serve here. So let me continue. First, as it pertains to the Village of Ossining proposal. While overtime seems to be the answer, it is only a short-term solution to a long-term problem. The increase in overtime will come at the expense of an officer's judgment, decision-making ability, efficiency, and the safety of the public and the safety of the officers. This is supported, as you saw last week, by the John Jay professor, who's an expert. This is simply not a professional long-term plan. Overtime is used for short durations when the work cannot otherwise be completed or personnel shortages. Short durations, it is clear that this overtime plan buys the Village of Ossining time to get officers trained and implemented. That's a given, which means they do not have the capability right now to provide police protection to the town without overtime. That's the overtime needed to get officers trained. Then there will be permanent overtime in place for the other tours to police the town. The fact that we have 10 patrol officers assigned to the town, many of them sitting up there, former town of Boston police officers, and they will be replaced by five village and 2 or 3 overlap officers, as was stated. The math just doesn't add up. I get it though. How much more overtime is needed when the overlap doesn't work out due to training, illness, vacation, and other leave issues, planned and not planned? It's nice when you can plan it all, but we all know that the plan goes out the window with the first contact again. We know that. Who's going to absorb those costs? I think that's an important question. And if you have fixed numbers and it goes beyond that, where will those numbers go and who will absorb it? It's an interesting dilemma that you guys are faced with. So with overtime comes with being sleep deprived, tired, officers' judgment may suffer. What happens and who's responsible if these officers who are working way too long makes the wrong decisions? This is now part of the record, and an officer gets injured from being tired or a citizen is injured due to an officer's exhaustion, any attorney will use this against the town. This is out there in the open now. So all their time sheets and everything, it's all going to be released. This is accepting a foreseen liability. Liability, 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 and that concerns us all. Why not just hire 10 cops in the village right now and do it the right way for everybody's safety? If you're going to do this, then do it right or don't do it at all. If this was the case, then all that savings the village PD presents, it's just not there. It's minimal. Apples to apples needs to be compared so that the town outside resident has the information to make an informed decision. Our salaries and the village PD salaries are close. They're not too far apart. Apples to apples is a better way to compare, at least on that issue. Why doesn't every police department in Westchester cut their police officer staff by 5 and pay the overtime instead of paying the salary and benefits? Because it doesn't make professional sense. If it did, every police department would run short of police while paying overtime for the long term. It just doesn't make professional sense, and it is dangerous. We all know that once overtime becomes part of the lifestyle, it's very hard to break free from it. It's like heroin. Take, for instance, the Department of Corrections prisoner transport issue. Westchester Department of Corrections contracts and provides a set amount of money to local police departments to transport that department's county prisoner. So the Corrections Department pays the local PD's money to do the transports. In the town of Ossining, we stopped accepting this money because it didn't cover all of our overtime expenses, and we were pushing that off to the taxpayer. I remember several years back that the village PD was worried that this prisoner transport responsibility would be taken away from them, lessening their overtime opportunities. Why would you spend overtime money on prisoner transports when you don't have to? There's absolutely no reason. Let the Corrections Department perform the transport function. I bring that up because if it is still occurring, it becomes an entitlement, just like this village police overtime scenario will in the town outside. And speaking of overtime, when I was chief, I was called down to a meeting in the village hall by Mr. Lyons, and it was about overtime at the July 3rd or 2nd fireworks, whatever it was. And it was revealed at that time when I asked, why am I here? And they said, well, we're questioning overtime. Okay, my overtime was $1,500. The village's Ossining overtime was $20,000 or $25,000. There's no reason for me to be in that room because we managed. That's what we did in the town. Different perspective on taxpayer money. I also heard that there are safeguards in place to stop police officers from working when they are tired from double shifts, etc. Well, those policies are only good when they are enforced. Policing is dangerous when you have a good night's sleep and are well rested. The tragedies can occur when you're not rested and not awake. Police departments should take a firm stance on tired officers working universally, not just here. Also, I read some excerpts about Ingle Park and that patrol down there. I would only like to offer that the former town supervisor, John Travokas, requested the town police to patrol and protect that park because he was unhappy with the village police and their responses to his personal requests about that building. The hiring of town residents needs to be also clarified. There is no town outside police exam list. Only the Village of Ossining Police exists. So what that means is that only Village of Ossining residents will be hired to patrol the town. There is no outside list. Most of the town of Ossining police officers came from the town outside community and they still patrol here today. And as you look around, most of them are local kids. How the Village of Ossining PD runs, Village of Ossining PD runs their business is their business. It's not mine. but I know that overtime is not a long-term solution, which means in the future, expect that you will have to hire an additional 5 police officers in the next contract to offset the overtime costs. And that is fine as long as you're all willing to accept that. Be wary of the bait and switch. What happens if this doesn't work? What is the safeguards that are going to be put in place? Because I can tell you, we're not coming back. We just don't have it. We just will not be in a position to go back and offer another contract. That's just a sad state of affairs for us. County police have a lieutenant and a sergeant fully dedicated to internal affairs and medical compliance. What that simply means is they investigate independently any officer involved in complaints from lack of courtesy issues to corruption. Also, they make sure that any line of duty injured officer is legally supervised and that no malingering or taking advantage of the system is occurring, that no line of duty officer is fraudulent. This guarantees the removal of any impropriety by the officer and increases citizen confidence. Constant follow-ups are necessary in these circumstances, as we all well know about 207C and those issues. The fully dedicated internal affairs component is crucial in this day to sustain and increase the public support so that we can be trusted and respected. This unit does not split its responsibilities with the usual general investigation so that they can be experts and are specifically trained in that manner. As a large department, you are held to a higher standard, and if you lapse in that regard, you will be called to task on it. I read the proposals, and there are some good points on both sides. A little fuzzy math from me. I can only speak to the town of Ossining and the county police culture. We are local community police officers. If we weren't, our contract would have been terminated before the 4 years were up. We fully understand the town and the townspeople. The town police and the county police are transparent, accessible, and professional. We have no bias towards the public, no agenda from any politician. We deliver fair and impartial police service to this community. 2 more pages and I'm done. While local is good, sometimes outside oversight with clear vision is better. In the end, I hope that the decision is made on the basis of public safety and not politics. Why not slow down, perform a study independently of the county and the village, and see what it's all about, just to make sure, by an outside agency. There are many good officers, as the ICMA report did, and those reports should not be negated as well. There are many good officers in the village of Ossining PD, and this is not a personal attack on any level to them nor to the village itself. However, the concept of police consolidation is a very good one, and maybe the village police department should look at ways to consolidate their services with the county police so that the taxpayer money can be saved. It is not getting any cheaper to live here in New York, and salaries are only going up, and we all know that. Why not look to consolidate some services such as their dispatching, their SWAT, their Marine unit, so that there isn't mission creep, to relieve the tax burden while further professionalizing this police service. Many village cops have expressed an interest and have pulled us aside in merging with the county. Well, maybe that will be the next thing, who knows? But they definitely have an interest independently of their administration. Lastly, we are here because we care. I want to mention that the town officers have dedicated their careers, their health to this town. In the last 8 years, Sergeant Kevin Noy, career-ending car accident. Police Officer Jordy Fields, career-ending car accident. And lastly, Police Officer Kurt Minell, career-ending horrific car accident with traumatic brain injury. Kurt was a town cop who merged into the county PD only to have permanent physical injury. There are many of us who have shed blood for this town over the years. Some of us had several surgeries, and yet we continue to work as police officers. I only mention this because there's a long history of sacrifice from the town officers, these guys. And most of you never knew how much sacrifice they had. We care about the town even though some of us are not local. I spend more time in the town than I did at my own home many evenings. So we all care what choices this town government makes when it comes to our residents, and they are our residents. We care about our people and we want to make sure that they are safe and treated fairly, that they have the ability for redress when something is wrong, that they don't get shunned and shut out and blocked, that they have transparency of their own government and their government services, that whoever polices this community does so with that fact that these residents pay their salary and that should never be taken for granted, and they should be first on any police agenda. Please rethink this decision going forward and request long-term solutions for the public safety of this community. It just appears that this is tailored a little bit so that the village police can do what they need to do to put these officers in place. You're putting a square peg in a round hole. Just think about the long-term solutions. That's all I request. Thank you very much.
Can you give that to,
I'd like to make a copy of this.
and we have one more, and then I'll call it a night.
I'll be pretty brief. I got a couple of points and a couple of questions I'd like to throw out there for the board. My name is Rob Melstein, Town Outside. It seems, based on all the comments, at least by the individuals who've spoken, that the biggest concern seems to be this overtime issue and the rookie police officer issue. But I first want to say I also agree that the Westchester County PD has done a very, very good job. In the couple of times they've had a call, knock on wood, hasn't been more than that. The response time has been excellent. There's been no question about the service, so thank you for your service there. I don't have a law enforcement background by any means, but just reading the proposals and just trying to make better sense of it. Ms. Jeffrey, I guess, is now officially on record here and through her letter to the editor that she seems that the overtime concerns are resolved for her. Is that accurate, pretty much? Are the other members of the board at this time able to say whether the overtime issue for them is resolved one way or another, or do the board members still have questions about that? And are they able to go on record tonight and say whether or not they are comfortable with the overtime issue presented in as it pertains to the village proposal?
Because we're in negotiations about the overtime and everything, so we really...
Okay, fair enough. The other point was about rookie police officers. A question regarding that. Does the plan call, and this is regarding the village proposal, does the plan of the village proposal call exclusively that those rookie police officers would be assigned to the town? So you hire the 5 and they get dropped in and the town outside is going to get the rookie police officers?
No.
No, okay. So I think then based on that, my point about that then, I don't think that's necessarily a fair thing to bring up and be potentially critical of the plan, because I would assume, and again, then the question is, in the current Westchester County PD plan and the one going forward, are there potentially rookie police officers that are assigned to the town as well? Okay, so you could, so you can't be sure. So to me, that's a wash based on the answers right here on that. So it seems to me that the main issue is the overtime issue. And again, I'm not a law enforcement official, so there might be some very valid points that have been made, and obviously that needs to be researched, and you make a determination on that. But I do want to say the first gentleman that spoke, he made some very good points, but with all due respect to him, $2.5 million over 4 years, and that's the approximate difference between the Westchester plan and the village plan, is a significant amount of money. That is not chump change. That is not a dollar. That's not pennies. That's a significant amount of money, and there's a lot of talk to compare apples and oranges. We're also not Oakland, California. I know Oakland has had a rebirth, but if the reference was to how their status was beforehand, we are certainly, thank God, with all due respect to Oakland, not Oakland. There does seem to be some animosity towards the village police department here, and there have been some, the gentleman who spoke before laid out facts, so I appreciate him doing that. But based on some of the other comments, it sounds like, boy, the village shouldn't even be patrolling the village. And I don't, if you read all the surveys, you read the data, the town/village of Ossining is pretty darn safe. And you look at all the data, you're looking, I think, 0.28, violent crimes per 1,000, which is significantly lower than the rest of the state. So in the defense of the village PD, I would say that they seem to be doing a pretty darn good job, and I think we have to have some respect for them, that they are not going to all of a sudden, if this contract goes to them, it's all going to fall apart. Because if it does, they shouldn't be patrolling the village. We should have the county take over everything, or another police department take over everything. So just responding to a couple of those things. There's no indication that the village PD would provide poor service. I think that's another, there's nothing that indicates that's the case. There will be bad apples in any police department, just like in any company as well. So some of the examples that have been cited, I'm sure you see that everywhere. But I would just say that I appreciate the board's effort to thoroughly review this and keep all that in mind, that yes, I believe the board does have a fiduciary responsibility to the town residents, and I don't think you can discount that there's a significant amount of money here there has to be one of the prime factors. It just has to be. You can't ignore that. And if the way the pricing comes out from Westchester County PD, I don't know what's inflating that. Is it salaries? Is it pensions? I don't know. That's beyond my scope. But to me, you can't discount that. And I appreciate the board's effort in reviewing everything, and yes, making sure that you're getting the apples-to-apples service going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I had to come and get this mic because we've had such an exciting meeting tonight that my mic actually died. I want to thank you all. This has been a quite informative meeting tonight, and we continue to work on the process of police services for the unincorporated area. It is something, everything that everybody has brought up tonight, whether it be the cost factor, the overtime factor, we are constantly taking into consideration every single day. So we will continue to move forward. We will be in touch with you when we have some more information. We put it out on a supervisor's update. So stay tuned. And as far as the reassessment, we hope that everybody allows everyone into their house, not everyone, just the Tyler technology people into their homes for the inspection. It's been a long night. And I want to thank you all. And next Tuesday, we will be at 16 Croton Avenue for a work session. And we hope to see you there. And so as we move forward, the town will keep you informed of everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you.